Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday, August 6th. We came into the session wanting to see essentially how price was going to be traded versus that prior day structure, that prior day volume point of control in NQ. That was right near that 18K level. That was the main level of interest here for today's session. And the idea was that if price could continue to hold above this area right through here, that is essentially the high volume node from Monday's session, that all of this action could be considered accumulation. And then if price, like I said, continues to trade above that area, today would be a day to be looking for dips to buy. That's essentially exactly what we did. That's exactly how price panned out. Now we have the gap lower, Monday's gap lower, pretty much completely filled here with today's move, almost right into that 18,550 upside level of interest. So not truly closed, but as far as the magnitude of the gap is concerned, it's mostly close. We could consider that gap just about filled. So what I'll be looking at for tomorrow's session is essentially how price is going to be responding to Friday's low. Whether or not buyers are able to sustain this recent buying activity over the past couple of sessions here and make a push back into Friday's range that holds. So the main focus there on NQ is going to be that 18,400 level of interest. Now, this week's volume point of control is just 2 sessions because we've only had 2 trading days so far this week, but this area does definitely remain significant. I'm going to be paying special attention to how this kind of 2-day structure continues to build out. As of right now, we do have a series of higher lows and higher highs. Again, the question is can the recent buying activity continue up and through that 18,400, or is price going to kind of settle into more of a range, right? More of kind of a near-term range, something like this. So that is yet to be seen. That's going to be my game plan for tomorrow's session. Again, primary focus on the 18,400 area. Then we'll be looking at today's profile as well. This served us well for today, looking at yesterday's profile. So I suspect we'll get some good action versus today's structure during tomorrow's session. Now jumping over to the daily chart here. Let's kind of double check what we're looking at. So today, largely just an inside day, right? Well within the expectations for today's session. I had mentioned this morning during the pre-market prep live stream, we had a massively wide candle for yesterday if you include the extended trading hours. And so probability did favor a little bit more volatility compression, a little bit of slower action compared to what we had seen Sunday night into very early Monday morning into Monday's New York session, Monday's regular trading hour session. So volatility compression has been seen. Let's jump over to the QQQ chart and kind of get a sense of what we're looking at. You could see both the prior 2 days with those wicks up through there. So definitely sellers attempting to step into the close as price kind of closes that gap from Monday morning, from Monday's session, right? And then trades back up into a previous key area of resistance right through here on QQQ. So buyers not out of the woods by any means. There's still a lot of overhead resistance to be keeping an eye on. One of the better case scenarios for buyers right now would be just continued sideways trading, like a little bit of a structure building out here at the year-to-date volume point of control. And so that is one scenario that I'm keeping an eye on. That was one thing we talked about back during Friday's session recap. Of course, didn't know about all the volatility we would be seeing Sunday evening with the Japan raising interest rates. And so, of course, cannot account for that. But as far as one potential scenario to consider, that would be A positive development for buyers would be just sideways action through here. Big structure build out before kind of continuing higher. So that is one thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, one potential idea to be watching for. Zooming out, we do want to keep in mind that price did test that weekly area of support, right? So remember, big picture, we have price holding daily and weekly time frame support. That was the low from Monday's overnight session, Monday's pre-market session. However, in the intermediate term, like if we look at the 60 minute, right, or even the 4 hour, this was another thing we had talked about this morning, you're still going to see that downtrend, right? Price still showing a series of lower highs here. So you want to be cautious, making sure you're aware of the structure you're getting involved with, making sure you're trading with good location. Definitely a lot of two-way action in the current market environment. I don't expect that to go away anytime soon. Likely we'll see a couple more weeks of that type of action, especially with more of the geopolitical headlines, things of that nature. We are still in a fairly high VIX environment. Let's take a look at what VIX is printing. So VIX still with that 27 handle, right, which is high. It's not what we were looking at yesterday, but it is still very high. If you compare it to, earlier in the year, we're talking about 12, 13, super, super low VIX environment. Very, 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 very tight moves. So some things to keep in mind. You want to be picking your spots. You want to be staying patient. You want to be really knowing what you want to see ahead of the session and waiting for that setup to really materialize, or just not trading, right? Staying in cash if you don't have that A-plus quality setup. We are seeing some selling into the close here. Again, just to reiterate, my focus is going to be on how price trades essentially versus this 18,400 area, right? Treating this as resistance, Friday support. There's the gap down spot on Sunday, a lot of resistance overnight, right? And then today as well, now seeing more selling. So a good clue heading into tomorrow will be how price kind of responds to the prior two session volume point of control, which is that blue line right through here. You can see price coming into that area right now. So we'll take it day by day, continue to see how that structure unfolds, and just stay methodical, stay patient, look for that easiest money trade. That is the game plan as of right now. Let's jump over to ES. So very similar type of structure, right? You have that initial low that was developed Monday morning, pretty much right at the regular trading hours open, a little bit before that RTH open actually. Higher low, and then testing that 53.40, which again, very similar to NQ, is Friday's low. So the significant gap down point, right? Friday's low, then holding as resistance, and now sellers stepping in pretty aggressively versus that 53.40. So the question now is, given current location, does essentially the two session volume point of control hold as support now, or is price going to be flirting with some of these lower areas of support, some of those lower levels of interest? That is yet to be seen, but this is kind of the main focus area I'll be looking at for tomorrow's session, kind of that 52.25 area, that overnight low, that low from this morning. Taking a look at the 5-minute chart, very similar type of approach today in NQ, in ES, just wanting to see, is yesterday's volume point of control, is that high volume node going to hold as support? And again, what I was looking to see is whether or not this was accumulation, at least in the near term. And today's action proves to us that yes, at least in the near term, that was some reaccumulation. And so that was the approach for today. Now we definitely have a different structure with price kind of closing that gap for the most part, testing some more important areas of resistance. We want to see, all right, to what degree are buyers willing to step in and support this thing? If they don't show up, right, we can expect a retest down into those recent lows. So that's the watch. Hope everyone had a profitable session, a good trading day. There was some really nice activity. Today we had a couple of early setups that materialized before 10 a.m. It got a little slow there after 10 a.m. and then a phenomenal retest into some downside levels of interest. The 2-hour trader framework there as well on both ES and NQ, which may actually be play of the week. We had some really, really good setups later in the morning today, kind of those early afternoon pullbacks into some of that intraday structure that aligned with a level of interest. So if you guys caught some of those moves, well done. If not, no worries. There will be plenty more setups in the future. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to shoot me a DM. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning for the prep. Have a good evening.